Welcome to Bookish Mind Podcast, Season 4, Episode 6. In this episode, we uncover how your surroundings silently shape your habits and why the key to change may be as simple as rearranging your environment. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into some truly fascinating materials, stuff that really challenges one of our most, ingrained beliefs.
Which belief is that?
That changing our habits is primarily about willpower, sheer motivation.
Ah, right, the just try harder idea.
Exactly. But what if, instead, the most powerful force for change isn't really inside us at all? What if it's more about the subtle architecture of the world around us?
That's precisely what we'll be exploring today. We'll look at how even minor shifts in our environment, things we barely notice, can lead to significant behavioral changes, often without us ever consciously deciding to alter our course.
So the mission today is?
Well, it's to really illuminate just how profoundly this invisible hand of your surroundings operates, and maybe more importantly, how you can actually become the architect of your own world to, foster the habits you desire.
Okay, let's unpack this. There's a particularly compelling example from Massachusetts General Hospital. Dr. Ann Thorndike. She's a primary care physician there.
Right, in Boston.
Yeah, she had this really ingenious approach. She set out to improve the eating habits of, thousands of hospital staff and visitors.
Okay.
But not by lecturing them about healthy choices or, appealing to their willpower. It was all about changing their environment.
And what's truly fascinating about her method is that it completely sidestepped individual motivation. Thorndike and her team, they designed this 6-month study specifically to alter the choice architecture of the hospital cafeteria.
Choice architecture.
Yeah.
That's how the choices are presented, right?
Exactly, how the options are laid out. And in their case, they simply changed how beverages were arranged. Simple as that.
And here's where it gets really compelling. Originally, the refrigerators right by the cash registers, super convenient, they only had soda.
Prime impulse spot.
Totally. So what they did was add bottled water as an option to every one of those fridges. And on top of that, they placed baskets of bottled water next to every food station throughout the room. Soda was still there, in its usual spots.
But water just became unavoidable.
Pretty much universally available at every single drink point.
And the results were, well, striking. Almost immediate. Over just 3 months, soda sales dropped by 11.4%.
Wow.
While bottled water sales surged by 25.8%.
Just from placement.
Just from placement. And they did similar things with food items, moved fruit to better spots, that kind of thing, and saw similar positive shifts. All of this, like you said, without a single word. No posters, no health talks, nothing.
That's incredible.
It powerfully illustrates this core principle. People often choose products not just because of what they are or even if they really want them, but simply because of where they are, how easy they are to grab.
It really does make you wonder how much of our choice is just reaction, doesn't it? Why do we always blame willpower first? Think about it, that plate of cookies sitting out on your kitchen counter.
Yeah.
Or the donuts in the office break room. Your immediate habits, your cravings, they genuinely shift depending on the room you're in and what's right in front of you.
Precisely. Environment acts as this silent, invisible hand shaping our behavior. Despite our unique personalities, our intentions, certain behaviors just tend to pop up under specific conditions.
Like how people naturally whisper in a church.
Exactly. Or how you might feel more wary on a dark street. That's the context dictating behavior. Our sources really emphasize that the most common and often most effective way behavior changes is through these external shifts, not some big internal struggle. Every habit, no matter how ingrained it feels, is deeply context-dependent.
And this idea, it's not actually new, is it? I remember reading about Kurt Lewin, the psychologist, back in the 30s.
Yes, 1936, he came up with that powerful, elegant equation. Behavior is a function of the person and their environment. B equals F, P, E.
BFPE. Simple but profound.
And Lewin's equation, BFTE, it was genuinely revolutionary back then. It shifted psychologists' focus from just looking at internal traits to understanding this dynamic interplay between the person and their specific context.
So it's never just about the person or just about the place, but the interaction.
Exactly. It's holistic. You have to consider both to understand behavior. And this wasn't just theory. Later, in 1952, an economist, Hawkins Stern, he described something called suggestion impulse buying.
Suggestion impulse buying. What's that about?
Well, Stern noticed that sometimes a shopper sees a product for the first time, maybe it's on a big display, and in that moment, they suddenly visualize a need for it. a need they didn't have before.
So the display creates the desire.
Or at least the impulse. It kind of bypasses rational decision-making by leveraging that immediate visual cue. It's not fulfilling a pre-existing want, it's sparking a new one on the spot.
Like how items at eye level in the supermarket always sell better. That's why the expensive brands are right there, isn't it?
Precisely. It's prime visual real estate. And those end caps, the displays at the end of aisles, they are money-making machines for retailers purely because they get so much foot traffic.
Get this. Our sources say that a full 45% of Coca-Cola sales come specifically from those end-of-the-aisle racks.
Wow, 45%. It just reinforces the principle: the more obviously available something is, the more salient, the more likely you are to grab it.
We like to think we're in control, though, choosing water over soda because we want to be healthy.
Right. But the truth is, so many of our daily actions aren't driven by conscious purpose. They're often just a consequence of us taking the path of least resistance, the most obvious option our environment offers. It's less active choice, more passive response.
So, okay, if our environments have this much sway, how does our own perception fit in? We experience the world through sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, and other subtle things too, right? Like temperature shifts, internal feelings.
Which raises a critical question: which sense dominates?
Well, based on what we're discussing, I'd guess sight.
You'd be right. Our sources highlight something pretty astounding. Out of maybe 11 million sensory receptors in the human body, roughly 10 million are dedicated to sight.
10 million out of 11, that's huge.
It is. Some experts even estimate that up to half of the brain's resources are used just for processing visual information.
Half the brain.
Ah.
Wow, okay, so how does that dependency on sight translate directly into our habits? How can we use that?
Well, it means visual cues are, without a doubt, the biggest catalyst for our behavior. Given how much we rely on vision, it's no shock that a small strategic change in what you see can lead to a big, often automatic shift in what you do.
So the implication is, sculpt your visual world to spark your habits.
That's the core idea. And the good news, as you said, is we don't have to be passive victims. We can actually be the architects.
Okay, how do we start applying this? Where's the practical takeaway?
Well, it means it's incredibly important to consciously live and work in environments that are filled with productive cues, and maybe just as importantly, are relatively free of unproductive ones. The beauty here is it puts control back in your hands, not by forcing willpower, but by designing your world to work for you.
Let's look at another example. This one's from the 1970s energy crisis. Dutch researchers were studying energy use in a suburb near Amsterdam. And they found something remarkable. Some homeowners consistently used 30% less energy than their neighbors, even though they had similar houses, paid the same electricity prices.
So what was the difference?
The location of their electrical meter.
Really? Just a location.
Houses where the meter was placed prominently in the main hallway used significantly less electricity than houses where the meter was tucked away in the basement.
Ah, visibility again. When their energy consumption was obvious right there in their line of sight, people just naturally adjusted. No nagging, no conscious effort needed. The cue was simply there.
It really shows that every habit starts with a cue. And we're way more likely to notice cues that stand out that are obvious.
Right. And unfortunately, our typical environments often make it easy not to do things because the cues are hidden.
Like keeping your guitar in the closet. You're not going to practice much. Or hiding a book on a crowded shelf. You'll forget you wanted to read it.
Exactly. When cues are subtle or hidden, they're just too easy to ignore. The behavior doesn't get triggered.
But conversely, if we deliberately create obvious visual cues,
then we can powerfully draw our attention toward the habits we want. Think about that famous example from Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam back in the 90s.
Oh, the flies in the urinals?
Precisely. The cleaning staff had this ongoing issue with spillage in the men's restrooms, so they installed these tiny, realistic-looking fly stickers near the drain of each urinal.
And apparently men just instinctively aimed for the bug.
Seems so. It dramatically improved aim, significantly reduced the mess. And get this. Analysis showed these tiny stickers cut bathroom cleaning costs by 8% per year.
8%. From a sticker. That's genius. A tiny visual cue, massive impact.
It's a brilliant illustration. The sources also mention a more personal story about apples. The author used to buy apples, put them in the crisper drawer,
and then forget about them until they went bad.
Yep.
Sounds familiar.
Exactly. Out of sight, out of mind. They never saw them, so they never ate them.
So what did they do? Redesign the environment?
Yep. They bought a nice big display bowl and put it right in the middle of the kitchen counter. Prime real estate. The next time they bought apples, they went straight into the bowl out in the open. Almost like magic, they started eating apples daily. Not because of some sudden health kick, but just because the apples were obvious, always in sight, always in mind.
Okay, so this brings us to the practical application for listeners. How can you, listening now, apply this in your own life?
Well, the sources give some really concrete examples. Simple ways to redesign your immediate environment to make good habit cues obvious. Okay, so, want to remember your medication at night? Put the bottle right next to the faucet on your bathroom counter. Can't miss it.
Makes sense.
Want to practice guitar more? Don't hide it away. Put the stand right in the middle of your living room. Make it visible.
Okay.
Want to send more thank you notes? Keep a stack of stationery and a pen right there on your desk, always visible.
Simple.
Want to drink more water? Fill up a few bottles each morning and just place them in common spots around the house. Your desk, the coffee table, your bedside table. Make it the easiest option.
It really boils down to this simple truth, doesn't it? If you want a habit to be a big part of your life, make its cue a big, unmissable part of your environment.
Exactly. And the most persistent behaviors, think about it, they usually have multiple cues, like smoking, driving, seeing a friend smoke, finishing a meal, feeling stressed. Lots of triggers.
So we can use that same idea for good habits.
Absolutely. By deliberately sprinkling triggers for good habits throughout your surroundings, you just increase the odds you'll think about them and act on them throughout the day. Your goal is to make the best choice, the most obvious choice.
That feels really empowering. It's about designing your world, not just reacting to it.
Precisely. You become the designer, not just the consumer of whatever environment you happen to be in.
Okay, there's another layer to this, though. The sources talk about how cues evolve. Habits might start with a specific trigger, but over time.
They become associated with the entire context surrounding the behavior.
Right.
The context itself basically becomes the cue.
Can you give an example?
Sure, social drinking is a classic one. Many people drink way more in social settings than they would alone. The trigger isn't just one thing, like seeing a beer tap. It's the whole situation, friends ordering, the music, the atmosphere.
The entire environment.
Yes, our brains are really good at assigning habits to locations, home, office, gym. Each place develops this subconscious connection to certain routines.
And it's not just the physical place, but our relationship to it. Like, my couch might be for reading, but someone else's is for watching TV and eating ice cream.
Exactly. Same couch, totally different habits linked to it because of learned associations. The space itself isn't dictating, it's the relationship you've built with it.
So the good news is, we can train those associations.
We absolutely can. There was this fascinating study with insomniacs. Scientists told them, only get into bed when you're actually tired.
Okay.
And if they couldn't fall asleep quickly, they had to get up, go to a different room, and only come back when they felt sleepy again.
What was the effect?
Over time, their brains started to strongly associate the context of the bed only with sleeping. It became much easier for them to fall asleep quickly when they got into bed.
Because the brain learned bed, sleep, not bed, browse phone, or worry, or watch TV.
Exactly. It repatterned the association, which leads to a really important strategy.
Which is?
Habits are often much easier to change or build in a new environment.
Why is that?
Because it helps you escape all those subtle, ingrained triggers and cues that nudge you towards your old habits. Going somewhere new, a different coffee shop, a park bench, even just an unused corner of your room lets you create a fresh routine without the old baggage.
That makes sense. It's hard to build a new habit when you're constantly fighting the old cues, like trying to go to bed early if your bedroom is also your late-night TV spot.
Right. It's an uphill battle. But stepping outside your normal environment means you leave those old behavioral biases behind. New habits can form without that constant interference.
But what if moving isn't practical? Most of us can't just change environments constantly.
True. So the powerful alternative is to redefine or rearrange your current environment. The mantra here is really useful. One space, one use.
One space, one use, meaning.
Create separate, dedicated zones if you can. A space for work, a space for study, for exercise, for entertainment, for cooking. Clear boundaries.
Like the entrepreneur example you mentioned earlier, working from the couch or kitchen table made it hard to switch off.
Exactly. The boundaries were blurred. Was the kitchen table an office or a dining space? Was the couch for work or relaxation? It was confusing.
But when they got a separate office?
The distinction became clear. Work happened in here, personal life happened out there. Switching off became easier because the environment supported that transition. Each space had one primary use.
This really highlights the double-edged sword of modern tech, especially our phones, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Phones are amazing. You can do almost anything, but that's the problem for habits.
Because it's a mishmash of cues.
Precisely. You pick it up to do work, but you're also conditioned to check social media, play games, read news.
Yeah.
It's hard to associate it with just one focused activity.
So even if space is limited, say in a small apartment, you could still apply this one space, one use idea.
Definitely. You can divide the room mentally or physically. Use this chair only for reading, this desk only for writing, that table only for eating.
You could even do it digitally.
Yeah, like the example of the writer. Computer just for writing, tablet just for reading, phone just for social stuff. Give every habit a distinct home.
And if you stick with that.
Then each context, each zone, gets strongly linked with a specific habit and mindset. Habits thrive on predictability. Focus comes easier at your work desk. Relaxation is deeper in your relaxation space. Sleep comes faster when your bedroom only means sleep.
So ultimately, stable, predictable behavior needs a stable, predictable environment.
That's the bottom line. An environment where everything has its place and purpose is an environment where habits form easily and stick. It's about designing for ease.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways? It seems clear that even tiny environmental changes can lead to huge behavioral shifts over time.
Absolutely, and every habit starts with a cue. We're far more likely to notice cues that are obvious, that stand out. So
Yeah.
making good habit cues super visible in your environment, that's a fundamental strategy.
And we learn that habits eventually link not just to one trigger, but the whole context. The context becomes the cue.
Which is why it's often easier to build new habits in a new place. You escape the old cues. But even if you can't change location, you can still be the architect of your current space. Redefine those zones.
It really makes you rethink control, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe it's less about willpower and more about designing our surroundings. So the question for everyone listening is, what one small adjustment could you make to your environment this week?
Yeah, what could make your desired habit the most obvious, easiest choice?
Think about it rearranging your desk, changing your kitchen layout slightly, adjusting your phone settings.
These small things can subtly nudge you towards who you want to become. It's not about fighting yourself, it's about designing your world to gently guide you.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the surprising power of environment on our habits. We hope you feel more informed and definitely more empowered to start shaping your own world.